Okay, welcome back, everybody. I hope that you had a relaxing spring break. Maybe you also got a chance to catch up on some work for classes. That'd be good too, right? I'm hoping to have all of your short story essays graded by this Monday. So you should be able to check out your grades, and you can also read the comments. I do leave comments on all of your essays, just like I do for the drafts. So if you go to where you submitted it and you scroll over it, you should be able to see the comments that I left as well as the grade. Send me an email if you have any questions about the grade or why you got the grade that you did. You can also check out, I did post at the beginning of the semester under the course info bar on Moodle. You can check out the rubric that I use to grade essays that, will give you a little more insight to how I came up with your grade. So yeah, and I'm of course still taking all late work, so anything that you were working on, you can submit, and I will update the grade when I get a chance. But for this video, I want to focus on Mississippi Goddam by Nina Simone, another one of our poems that are a possibility to write about for this poetry essay. I'm also hoping to have the assignment sheet for this essay posted for you so we can see all the due dates and stuff. But right now, I'd focus on reading all these poems and thinking about them, and start thinking of different ways of analyzing them. Start thinking about what you might want to write about for an essay. Okay, and let's get into this poem. So just like I talked about with the other ones, I guess I would look at this and want to start with just noticing stuff, right? We're looking for repetition. We're looking for things that stand out so that we can find a starting place to start considering what the message of this poem may be. So, in terms of repetition, I think the first thing that sticks out to me is these kind of two different sections where it repeats "do it slow" a bunch of times, and then with her saying like other words in between. Um, like this one, she's saying, washing the windows, do it slow, picking the cotton, do it slow, you're just plain rotten, do it slow, you're too damn lazy, do it slow. So I want to think about this. Do it slow. What does that mean? Why is that being emphasized? Why is that getting repeated so much? One other thing that you'll notice about this, of course, I also posted the video of this song being performed, which is just excellent. Nina Simone if you're not familiar with her, she is just fantastic. Her voice is so excellent. And she's a very interesting person too. I think there's a documentary on her on Netflix that is pretty good that I would recommend. Um, right, do it slow. So oh yeah, one thing about the video, when you watch it being performed, those lines "do it slow" are always sung by the backup singers, right? She doesn't say "do it slow"; it's the backup singers. Um, and I think she also says when these lines of "do it slow" getting repeated, I think there's also parts where she says like "that's what they said" or "that's what they tell me" or yeah, I think "that's what they said" is what she says. So she says like a they. If we're thinking about who's saying "do it slow," like even on the lyrics that we have, it's in quotation marks, "do it slow," right? So if we're looking at that, it's sung by the background singer. She refers to it as they. It's in quotation marks. It's obviously someone telling her this, right? She's being told, "Do it slow, go slow," this kind of stuff. So I think in the context of the civil rights movement and all the things we've been talking about, we can think of this insistence on going slow as kind of like the mainstream position of the time. In Letter from Birmingham Jail, Martin Luther King talks about the white moderate, right, and how they were an obstacle towards black people trying to gain equality at this time. And I've tried to explain that Martin Luther King was nowhere near as popular then as he is now. That the average person, especially like the average white person, was not supportive of the things that he was doing, of his methods of protesting, even though they were nonviolent. Most people still viewed it as like, oh, does he really need to do this? Isn't he making too big of a deal? Like, look, things are getting better already. He's going overboard. So I think this "do it slow" it kind of is the voice of the political mainstream or of the white moderate that MLK talks about, telling them to go slow. Because that really just is what so many activists during the civil rights movement ran up against, was this idea of like, okay, well, we agree with your point, right? Like, obviously, black people are treated bad in this country, but you can't go too fast. It's gonna everyone will lose their mind, you know, and they use this kind of argument to try to justify the continuation of segregation, as well as, you know, all the other injustices and stuff, right? So I think that's one thing we can pick up here is do it slow as being kind of uh, like the political mainstream saying that to activists like Nina Simone, who was pretty active in terms of protests and stuff like that. So that's one thing that jumps out to me just when we're trying to notice stuff here. So the other thing that gets repeated is, of course, the chorus, which, you know, we got that right at the beginning. Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest. And everybody knows about Mississippi, goddamn. So we have Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi. Obviously, these are all southern states. I think she might say some other states at different times, but at least the way that it's written here, it's these three southern states, right? And I think definitely Alabama and Mississippi are super infamous, especially during this time period, as being some of the most, um, you know, like hateful towards Black people, like some of the worst places to live as a Black person. Especially Mississippi in particular, there was a lot of like famous crimes against Black people that took place there, like Emmett Till. If you're familiar with that case of a Black teenager, really, who just got murdered kind of brutally, and then the killers. It was very obvious that these, I think it was like three white men were responsible for his death, and they end up getting acquitted by an all-white jury. So just blatant injustices like that. Medgar Evers, I think, is another one that took place in Mississippi. So I think Mississippi was kind of like, you know, a hotbed for this kind of anti-Black violence. So she says, Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest, and everybody knows about Mississippi. So the phrase, the part that I'm interested in here is this line, "Everybody knows," and you know, we can also talk about a little bit about the way that she sings the song and the way it's performed. I do think that can be relevant to our analysis. And I think she, you know, she gets increasingly frustrated, I think, as the song goes on, and by the end, you can hear kind of the anger in her tone of voice when she hits that last chorus in the video that I posted. But this phrase, "everybody knows," what does that mean? Everybody knows about Mississippi. What's the significance of that? I think what it says to me is like that this stuff isn't a secret, you know? And, you know, when she's writing this song, like it's not 1950 anymore. Like when she's writing the song, we've been through this stuff for, you know, obviously for decades, going on centuries, but even in the way of like it being heavily publicized in major newspapers with people like Rosa Parks, where and television, I think, was the big one too. That was kind of the big difference with like the 50s and 60s, especially, was just seeing broadcasts of the kind of brutality that these protests were met with, and yeah, just seeing that on your TV. You know, this is also a big thing when people talk about Vietnam, that it was the first war where it's just on the news at night. Everyone in their home is seeing this stuff on TV. So it was very much the same thing with the civil rights movement at this time. Seeing, you know, these horrible images of people being shot with fire hoses or having dogs come after them or just getting beaten with clubs or whatever it is. So everybody knows. Everybody knows about Mississippi. It's not a secret. There's no excuse. Like there's no one at this point. There's no one in America who can be like, no, I think Black people are treated fine actually. You know, or like I don't think the police beat them up. It's like, well, everyone has seen this. Everyone knows. So I think, yeah, it's not a secret, and I think the other thing, everybody knows and nothing changes. I think is like kind of another takeaway from that line, is like it's not a matter of just publicizing this stuff. It's not just like, oh, if it's not okay. So I guess when it comes to like racism and stuff, people often try to use like ignorance as an excuse. You know, like, oh well they just don't understand, or you know, they don't know any Black people, or whatever. People try to use like ignorance as a excuse for racism or whatever. And I think this "everybody knows" line is kind of a going directly against that. You know, like in you know, by 1965, you could not have been ignorant of this stuff. Just because it's in the news, it's on TV. People know who Martin Luther King is. People have seen these protests and how they're met with violence and stuff like that. So, and then a kind of another related line in this that I think goes along with this "everybody knows" is, let me see. At one point, let me see if I can find it. She's saying, she's like, why don't you see it? Why don't you feel it? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, that's towards the end, right? This is the second time when it's going through like the do it slow thing, and then she ends it by saying, "Why don't you see it? Why don't you feel it? I don't know. I don't know." So I think that that is kind of connected to this idea of everybody knows. I'm just like, why don't people get it? You know, like people know this is going on, but seemingly just don't really have a problem with it, or at least not enough of a problem with it to actually change things. You know. So that's my reading at least of this everybody knows line. And then maybe we should think a little bit about "Goddam" as appearing in the title and as appearing in the chorus, getting repeated a lot. Um, obviously religion played a big role in the civil rights movement. Obviously, you had MLK and the kind of like Christian church movement that was a big part of it. And then you also had like Malcolm X who converts to Islam and stuff. So you had that kind of religious aspect of it too. But religion was kind of played a big role. Um, so to say goddamn, right? It just reminds me of all the kind of cliched quotes from Martin Luther King that get played up a lot, especially like when we learn about this stuff in high school, when he talks about like love thy enemy or turn the other cheek, and it's like it's a lot of his stuff is like based on religion, right? A lot of his peaceful protest stuff is based on like kind of Christian theology of like love your enemy and yeah, that kind of a thing. So I think what she's doing here by with the repetition of "God damn" is definitely something different, right? Like it's invoking religion and looking to religion, but it's "God damn them," you know? It's like "God damn Mississippi." It's not like God let me love my enemies in Mississippi. It's like "God damn Mississippi." So it's definitely a much more aggressive and kind of I guess, angry way of looking at it. It's a different way, though, of reading religion into the situation. That like Nina Simone, I think, would prefer for people to be punished for their bad acts in this kind of way. And another related line, I think, on this idea of like religion and the role that that should play in the movement. There's this other line. She says, "I don't belong here. I don't belong there. I've even stopped believing in prayer." So yeah, that's another one where I think we can see her again separating herself from that more Martin Luther King Christian church segment of the civil rights movement. I've even stopped believing in prayer. Like Martin Luther King would never say that, right? He would always say, "Oh well, I still believe that God will help us, and eventually white people will like realize that they're being racist and we need to fix this or whatever." So she says, "I've even stopped believing in prayer," and "Goddamn Mississippi." So she still seems interested in the role that religion can play in the civil rights movement, but definitely in a very different way, I would say, than Martin Luther King and what we see from him in Letter from Birmingham Jail. And I think it can be important to think about it that way because I'm going to talk about this more in some upcoming videos. But I think the best way to try to start thinking about arguments for an essay we're going to write about these poems is to kind of think of how the poems fit in with the politics of the time period, right? So, like something like Mississippi Goddam, how does that fit in with the political theories from Martin Luther King, from Malcolm X? Obviously, there's many other thinkers that we could look at. Maybe I'll give us a few of them, but I think kind of making an argument about what are like the politics of the poem, right? How does this poem fit in with the different political theories that were involved with the civil rights movement? So I think we can see it criticizing Martin Luther King pretty directly in some certain ways like that. I also want to say something about this other part of the line I just read. "I don't belong here. I don't belong there." I think that gets to something really central too, which is like just the sense of America not being a country or like and at this time self like openly not being a country for all races, like there was a lot of people during the 50s and 60s, like senators, presidential candidates, sometimes presidents. There were a lot of people during this time period who would say things like America's a country for white people, or like this is a white man's country, shit like that. Just despicable stuff, right? But that very much was a not a fringe sentiment, like that's not what every white person thought for sure. But there was a not insignificant number of people who were still saying stuff like that and openly kind of believing that stuff. So I don't belong here. I don't belong there. I think that just kind of speaks to this feeling of not belonging, not feeling like it's a country for black people or a country that's interested in representing black people or treating them like citizens. Okay, here's one more line I want to look at. This is also towards the end, I believe. Yeah, this is right at the end. Um, she says here this is right before the last chorus. Excuse me. She says, "You don't have to live next to me. Just give me my equality." So I thought this was an interesting line. You don't have to live next to me. So much of the politics around the civil rights movement, and again, especially like Martin Luther King specifically, it was so much about ending segregation, right, and bringing about integration. Making it illegal to have segregated restaurants and hotels and segregated schools and stuff. That's the event that's usually looked at as kicking off the civil rights movement, Brown v. Board of Ed, was about integrating schools. So I feel like when we think about the movement, we think, oh, well, integration is what the goal was, right? And I think if you're talking about Martin Luther King and maybe the people who agree more with him, I think that's kind of true. But what she's saying here, you don't have to live next to me, just give me my equality. She doesn't really seem interested in integration, right? Like compare what she's saying here to the famous lines in "I Have a Dream," where Martin Luther King talks about a little black boy and a little white boy walking hand in hand, or like children of different races playing together and growing up together and stuff. Nina Simone says you don't have to live next to me. So I just feel like what she is giving voice to here is a fundamentally different vision of what equality is and what it would mean. For Martin Luther King, if the races are not living together, I don't think he would look at it as equality. She's saying you don't have to live next to me. I don't care to integrate. It's I just want equality. I just want to be able to have control over my life and not have someone like oppressing me or making laws that discriminate against me or whatever. So I think this is something important that I've heard so many people say, and again, a lot of this is because this is the way that we're taught this stuff in high school or whatever. But I always hear people say like, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, they had the same goal, but they just went about it in different ways. And I'm going to say this in some other videos this week, but I just don't think that's true. I don't think that's right. I think if we make the goal so general as to say, oh, well, they wanted black people to be treated better. Like, yeah, they both wanted that. But if we talk about what their visions for equality were, I think it's different. For Martin Luther King, it's integration, right? Nina Simone, it doesn't really seem interested in integration per se here. That's not to say that she's fine with segregation, but it seems, again, you don't have to live next to me. She doesn't really care if she's like living around a bunch of white people. She just wants to be able to, again, control her own life or whatever and not be discriminated against or treated unequally. So I think this is maybe more something like self-determination or like something like that. But I don't know exactly how we want to say it. Maybe we'll see more when we look at this speech by Malcolm X that I'm going to have us read. But yeah, her saying you don't have to live next to me, it just seems like that is fundamentally different than what Martin Luther King says in the "I Have a Dream" speech and elsewhere, where he's really interested in the races like coming together to like fix this problem or something. And yeah, she says you don't have to live next to me. I just want equality. So yeah, that was another thing. Just again about what like the goal is and what they think about equality as entailing. Let's see. Oh, okay. So I also wanted to talk about the way the song is sung. I think I mentioned this a little bit before. But well, first of all, her voice is just outstanding, right? Her voice is amazing in this video. But the other thing is like I was saying before, I think you can feel the kind of frustration and like anger kind of built. I think this is kind of an angry song, especially towards the end of it, where she's repeating, everybody knows about Mississippi, everybody knows about Alabama, everybody knows about Mississippi, goddamn. And that's the in the last chorus where she says everybody knows in relation to all of them. So I think it's again the frustration of we can all see how fucked up this situation is, and it's just not being fixed. So I think her brand, like I think the politics of this poem are more confrontational, more aggressive, more radical, uh, maybe more revolutionary than what we see from Martin Luther King and what you saw in, for instance, the video of We Shall Overcome or something like that. So when we're trying to situate this stuff within the civil rights movement, I think we have to keep all of that stuff in mind. But yeah, that's just some of my analysis. Oh, maybe one more thing. So I just want to read through some of these lines. This is from the second part of the do it slow, the second time that happens. I just want to read some of them. So it's, but that's just the trouble, do it slow. Desegregation, do it slow. Mass participation, do it slow. Reunification, do it slow. Do things gradually, do it slow, but bring more tragedy. I think that's an interesting one. Do things gradually, but bring more tragedy. So I think that's what she really sees these, again, kind of like political moderates, these like supposedly practical, pragmatic people saying is that if we go slow, it's just going to be more death, more suffering on the part of Black people, more Emmett Tills, more Birmingham church bombings, stuff like that. So she's like, if we agree and we do it slow, it's just going to be more tragedy for us. So why would we do that? Why would we sit around and wait like this for a bunch of senators to pass laws and stuff? She just seems fed up with these things. It seems like she wants something more radical. She wants something more confrontational, and she doesn't seem to want to compromise with power in the way that, like, in Letter to Birmingham Jail, Martin Luther King talks a lot about negotiation, right, and compromising with the people in power to make gradual improvements and stuff. And yeah, her politics in this poem just seem very different from that. If we do things gradually, it'll bring more tragedy. Um, we shouldn't listen to these people saying do it slow. We need to kind of take it for ourselves. I think that's kind of how I would summarize the politics of this poem, this song. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This is one of my favorites. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.